Well, thank you very much, Peter. May I express my gratitude to the SABC, the New Age, and to Transnet as the sponsor that's made this business breakfast a possibility. And we also greet, dotted around the tables here, members of the BEE Advisory Council, as well as all the other participants who are here with us this morning. This business breakfast is taking place ahead of the National BEE Summit, which will be held today and tomorrow. And this is an important event which has been organized by the BEE Advisory Council. As Peter indicated, it's been 10 years since the BEE bill came into operation. The Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act has been in operation for 10 years. But it was during this administration that we completed the institutional framework by the appointment of the BEE Advisory Council. The BEE Advisory Council actually sits under the chairpersonship of the President of the Republic, and President Zuma has been an active participant in the work of the Advisory Council. Now, over the course of this term, this administration, we've looked self-critically at what has been achieved through the BEE Act and the codes which derive from the Act, and we've asked ourselves some hard questions. What needs to be done to improve the performance of BEE in this economy? And that is the work which has been ongoing and which will culminate in two important pieces of legislation. The first operating in terms of regulations, which will be amendments to the codes of good practice, and those codes will in fact be published in the Government Gazette tomorrow week on the 11th of October. The other piece of legislation is an amendment bill. That amendment bill has passed through the National Assembly. It's already been adopted by the National Assembly, actually with a quite significant degree of all-party support, and it's now with the National Council of Provinces. The National Council of Provinces, I am informed, all of the provinces have got mandates on this. It's going back to the committee next week, and in due course will be presented to a plenary of the National Council of Provinces. So both pieces of legislative work, the amendment bill and the codes, are well on track to being completed during the term of this administration. Let me say, I think that all of that work took place in a context of a shared perspective that achieving broad-based black economic empowerment was a political imperative and a matter of equity. We cannot have a democracy in which everybody has the right to participate in the political process, but the economy is something else. It's also a matter of equity, because if we don't have participation by all our people, that's unfair. But I think more than that, we've all agreed that BEE is an economic imperative. We cannot have an economy that's growing and developing if it draws its leadership, its talent, its skills from only a small minority of the population. Even if we want to talk about a consumption-driven boost to our economic growth, we can't talk about that happening if only a very small part of the population is able to benefit from the opportunities that are available in the economy. So BEE is actually also an economic imperative. When we looked at the track record of BEE at the start of this administration, as I said, self-critically, we felt that actually BEE had not made a sufficient and a sufficiently broad-based impact across the economy. We found that there were too many instances where the average BEE deal was what we could call a passive shareholding transaction, where somebody acquired some shareholding rights but actually were not put into leadership positions in the companies that they were involved in. The scorecards had 7 elements, including things like supplier development, skills development, employment equity, corporate social responsibility, and so on. But we found that many players who were claiming to be significant contributors to BEE were not in fact doing very much in these particular parts of the scorecard. And yet the benefits to small business of a symbiotic relationship between big and small business is well established in many fast-growing developing countries, particularly those on the Asian continent. And so what we said we needed to do was to make the following changes. First of all, there is this issue of fronting. Fronting, in its crudest, is where you present yourself as a black-owned company, but actually you're not really. You present yourself through perhaps appointing the gardener and calling him the CEO, but actually he's really the gardener. You present yourself as though you're black-owned. Now, if you do this, you're doing this because you think there's some benefit either in terms of approaching government for a contract and presenting yourself as black empowered when you're not, presenting yourself to other people that you're perhaps a supplier of as black empowered when you are not, or even presenting yourself to the public as black empowered when you are not. And I think you can see that it is a form of fraud. And in fact, we have had a number of cases of people that have done this who have been convicted of the common law offense of fraud. But what we found is that that crude example I gave you is not really the norm anymore. It's much more complex fronting that's taking place. People are given contracts. They think they're going to be significant players on the board. They find they are relegated to subordinate roles on the board. We find that there are all sorts of arrangements where the transaction is actually limiting the role of the empowerment partners. And we found also that the common law offense of fraud allows one route, but a difficult route. You have to go to court and there's only a criminal outcome. And so we said that what is necessary is that we actually have a statutory definition of fronting. And that is one of the main purposes of the amendment bill. We've introduced a statutory definition of fronting, and we've also introduced a mechanism to deal with BEE fronting. There will be appointed a commissioner who will act without fear or favor, but will not be a hugely expensive independent bureaucracy because there will be an official located within the Department of Trade and Industry. They will be charged with receiving complaints, seeing if they can achieve solutions, and if they can't achieve solutions, then in the end of the day, there is the criminal route of charging people with the statutory offense of fronting. There's also grown up a verification industry, an industry of people that go around, check people's scorecards, and tell them what their level of empowerment is. This industry was not subject to any regulatory system, and the bill will also create a regulatory framework for the verification agency. We've provided for the alignment of the sector codes, sector charters, to the BEE codes. That's also provided for in the bill, and there are some other matters in addition to that provided for in the bill. In the codes, we've sought to reduce the number of elements of scoring from 7 to 5, so it should be easier to construct your codes. We've combined a number of categories to reduce it from 7 to 5. One of them, for example, there was enterprise development and there was supplier development. We've combined those two. And what we've done is we've said that there must be sub-minimum scores in all of those, or at least in 3 of the 5 elements in the codes. And we said that if you don't achieve the sub-minimum, then we're going to reduce your overall level of BEE recognition. There was a lot of comment about this, the time frame to adjust, and the level of discount. And what I can say is that we have listened to that, and we have tried to make an approach which encourages people to comply rather than to put their hands up and say, I can't do it. So there will be a transition, and there will be what we think is a reasonable level of discount if you don't achieve those particular sub-minima. The other thing we found, and I think this is very important for small business, is that we found that black-owned small businesses were required to go and get verification certificates, pay 30 to 40,000 rand for a verification certificate, merely to have somebody tell them that they were black-owned when they knew that in the first place and everybody knew that. And so we're saying, actually, we're going to take that away. We're going to say you are an exempted microenterprise, you are 100% black-owned, you'll automatically be recognized as level 1. 50% plus, you automatically recognized as level 2. And anybody up the supply chain will have to accept an affidavit from you, not go and demand that you get a verification certificate. If you lie in the affidavit, or you think that the person's lied in the affidavit, you go to the commissioner. That's what the commissioner is there for. And that if the person is lying, that's a fronting offence. So we think that that will be something which will remove a significant burden on small black enterprises. Those changes and a few other changes, we've tweaked a few of the parameters of the different categories of qualifying small enterprises, exempted microenterprises, things of that sort. We've tweaked a few of those also in the codes. Those changes in the codes, as I said already, will be the first of the legislative changes to come into force, and that will take place next Friday in the Government Gazette. Now, we're going to be presented with a piece of research in the summit, which is taking place in a little while from now. And that piece of research is actually telling us that we've made quite a bit of progress in BEE. It'll be the task of the summit to interrogate that piece of research, because it's also telling us that we've made a bit of progress across the scorecard, which is what we've been trying to achieve. We've been trying to achieve this because we want to ensure that when we empower people, they become real, substantive economic actors in this country's economy. That's what we want to see, both as suppliers and also in the ownership category. Let me just say one last thing before I conclude my opening statement. The Advisory Council has said, well, what is the next big project that we need to take on board? And we've listened to what the President of the Republic has been saying. He's been saying we've got an industrial policy. We are seeking to move forward with manufacturing. The African continent, for very good reasons, is seeking to industrialize. But where are the black industrialists? I'm not saying we don't have any, but we have too few. The manufacturing sector is not sufficiently transformed in terms of black economic empowerment. And so the next big project, which the Advisory Council has already started working on, is to develop a particular focus on the development of black industrialists. That's an important piece of work. That's an important piece of work, which I think is going to straddle both this administration and the next. But I think that is an overview of where we are. An overview of what this summit will grapple with. They'll have to interrogate everything that we've been doing, give their advice on what still needs to be done, give their comments on what they think the state of BEE in this country at this moment is, and the direction that we intend to move. So let me stop at this point, and thank you very much.